out to travel back in time to meet my great-great-grandparents, Charles and Nancy McDowell. Living in upstate New York, they were still newlyweds at the outbreak of the Civil War. Nancy was only 15 when she married 23-year-old Charles. The year Nancy turned 17, Charles enlisted in the Union Army. For well over a century, their love and sacrifices during the war remained silent as their collection of letters sat undisturbed in a small wooden box hidden in an attic. Then one day, I discovered them. I selected a letter at random and gently unfolded it, afraid I would tear it. The handwriting was strange and the ink somewhat faded, making it difficult to read. Then suddenly I came upon a phrase I recognized instantly: Old Abe. Charles was writing about his first impression of President Lincoln. In addition to the letters was Nancy's obituary, which reads, "Mrs. McDowell is dead. Shook hands with Lincoln." Eventually, their letters were transcribed and published in my book, Ever True, A Union Private and His Wife, with excerpts presented in this play. During the 10 years it took me to research the story behind Charles and Nancy's letters, I flipped through long-forgotten military files in the National Archives, where I uncovered family secrets, gathered memorabilia hidden throughout the McDowell homestead, including a tiny Bible carried by Nancy during the war, and I scoured overgrown battlefields and forts, such as Fort Foote, which stood on a bluff overlooking the Potomac River. There, I found old nails and the remains of this screwdriver, possibly used by Charles when he built the dock. Hidden among the trees are the enormous cannons, now manned only by the ghosts of the past. Lincoln had visited the fort to watch firing demonstrations. One can still see oyster shells strewn among the trees, reminiscent of the time Charles and Nancy, along with the regiment, entertained Lincoln and other visiting dignitaries on champagne and oysters. But those parties did not last. My great-grandparents were ordinary folks who lived through extraordinary times. Now to meet Charles and Nancy, who have been brought back to the land of the living through their love letters. They will take you with them into war's scandals, infidelities, the ever-present threat of death, and the court-martialing of a cow.
It is 1862, and war fever is high. It has been over a year since the first shots were fired at Fort Sumter. President Lincoln asks for an additional 300,000 men to serve in the Union Army for 3 years. When the son of Secretary of State Seward organizes what was to become known as the New York 9th Heavy Artillery in the summer of 1862. Charles McDowell, recently emigrated from Canada to upstate New York, enlists, despite his father's frantic pleas to stay out of the war. After learning the basics of a soldier's life in Auburn, New York, Charles is roused at 4 a.m. on September 12, 1862. Leaving his 17-year-old wife Nancy with her parents, Charles McDowell begins the greatest adventure of his life as a private in the Union Army. But he begins it quietly because they march past Lieutenant Colonel Seward's home on the way to the train station, where Seward's young wife and newborn child lay sleeping.
September the 13th, 1862. Dear wife, we started from Auburn Friday morning at 8 o'clock, and we was in New York Saturday morning at 6 o'clock. We was met with great cheers all the way along. We're stationed right near Broadway, and it's the liveliest place I ever see. They have the most ways for making money you ever see. This is a beautiful place. We had 2 girls come by and dance for us today. They both danced and played on accordion all at once. The nicest I ever saw. I want you to write and let me know when you started for home. I looked for you all the next day. I didn't know whether you had gone or not, but it was the lonesomest day I ever saw. I hope I will never feel so again. Well, our guns has just come up, and I think we will start right off. Your ever true and affectionate husband, Charles McDowell.
Charles's regiment heads to Washington, where the men enjoy sightseeing and watching the construction of the Capitol building. Yet the excitement dims for Charles when week after week he receives no letter from Nancy.
October the 10th. Dear wife, something seems curious that I don't get a letter from you. I begin to think that you've forgotten me already. You know what you said before we parted, and I know your word to be good. Most all the boys got a good many letters, and they say you have forgotten me.
Dear Charlie, your letter has come at last. You said that you thought I had forgot you, but I will never forget you, the longest that I live. I have written a great many times, and I am not to blame if you do not get them. Old Cartwright done well when he got married. His wife come to him the other day, and she was so drunk that she fell down behind the stove. She laid there a long time. They have got the story around that Hank Covers' wife slept with Bert a week or two at Auburn.
Despite the grand life enjoyed by Charles, sanitary conditions are so poor that he contracts the deadly typhoid fever, the same illness that had recently taken the life of Lincoln's little son Willie, as well as Nancy's older brother John. In an effort to save Charles's life, Nancy sends him several home remedies, such as peppermint oil, but warns that taking too much of it will give him the piles, that is, hemorrhoids.
Dear Nancy, I am gaining pretty fast. I think I shall soon be able to do duty. We have Seward down here about every other day, and sometimes he fetches old Abe with him. He looks like about any old farmer. Our boys is all lying around today. Some's writing and some is sleeping and some is running around. Well, goodbye, Nancy. I often think of you.
Dear Charlie, I am very lonesome here today. If you was here, I wouldn't be so lonesome. I don't like sleeping alone. I kick around like everything. I wished you was here to help fill up the bed. From your ever true and affectionate wife.
November the 28th, 1862. They say that Burnside sent a dispatch this afternoon to Lincoln and wanted to know if he should burn Richmond. I think he's going to do something. There's a considerable many of the boys sick, but I never felt better than I do tonight. But I ain't very strong. These doctors don't know nothing. One of them is under arrest. If I had took all the medicine they gave me, I think I would have been dead now. I had a double handful of quinine powders, but all I took was 3 or 4. I got bone set tea or one thing or other. I tell you, I believe in doctoring myself. I could write you a good deal about some of the boys, but it's against our rules. Well, not my rules, but theirs, because I ain't going to do anything I'm going to be ashamed to have them write about. I will tell you when I get home. Goodbye, Nat. How I would like to see you, but keep good courage.
Dear Charlie, they are having a terrible time about Bert and old Miss Converse. They say that Bert told his wife about it. They say that when Miss Converse was to Auburn, she went and called for a room and then sent for Bert. Bert's wife says she wished she knew what Bert had done before she went to see him. She would have not have gone near him. We have killed the fat cow and hung it up. I wished you was here to help eat it.
December the 14th, 1862. I should like to get a hold of a piece of that beef you killed. I would hang on and growl. But then, what's the use of talking beef? We're fixing for Christmas. We're going to have mule soup, but that's nothing new. The boy's ears begins to stick up awfully. Old Abe in Seward was here tonight and said there was 5,000 of our men killed and wounded yesterday just the other side of Fredericksburg. I'd like to be there with you to spend Christmas and New Year's, but I'm afraid I shan't. Little did I think last Christmas that I would be away off here venturing my life for the country. Now, I must go to roll call now.
Dear husband, I am here all alone. Well, all but the cats. All the folks has gone to meeting and I don't like to go, so I have to stay home alone. I wish that I could come out there and stay as long as you have to stay. That would be just what I should like, to be with you, for I don't take any comfort in the way that we live now.
The regiment allows a certain number of wives to move in with their husbands while stationed in Washington. Charles begs Nancy to come. She does come and writes to her mother,
March the 8th, 1863. Dear Mother, we had got quite fixed up well. We live in a cloth tent, not quite as large as your kitchen. We have got a bed, a stove, and a cupboard made out of a box. We have got a big stool that two can sit up to the table with. I have got a wash dish and kettle and a water pail, and we have got 4 tin cups, 2 knives, and forks. We've got 2 tin plates, 2 iron spoons, and a candlestick. We have got a bottle of pepper sauce. I've got Billy Wager's teapot. It's the funniest little thing. It has the spout on the side. Charlie can draw rations for me, so it won't cost anything for me to stay down here. From Nancy McDowell.
Charles's regiment is ordered south of Washington to build the largest of Lincoln's forts on a bluff overlooking the Potomac River. Fort Foote will be mounted with heavy sea guns to guard the water's approach to the capital. Nancy determines to make some money.
November the 6th, 1863, Fort Foote. Dear Father, I've neglected writing for some time, but to tell you the truth, I haven't got much time. I'm detailed to work on the barracks, and nights I have to help Nancy peel apples. Nancy is in the pie business pretty strong. She has a woman to help her a good deal of the time. She pays her 3 shillings a day. We sell about 70 pies a day, and after payday, we could sell 3 times that many if we had them. Well, I've traded my old watch off for a revolver, and Nancy's practicing on it. She's getting to be quite a marksman.
President Lincoln visits Fort Foote to watch a firing demonstration from the large cannons guarding the Potomac. Charles's regiment entertains him with champagne and oysters. As impressive as Fort Foote is, however, it is an area so unhealthy it becomes known as the graveyard of the Potomac. At any one time, half of the regiment is sick with malaria or typhoid fever. Nancy's mother reminds Charles and Nancy that they are closer to danger there than in New York and urges them to get some religion. Nancy does indeed face death when she contracts the dreaded typhoid fever. She is rushed home in the care of her mother.
March the 8th, 1864. Dear husband, I am feeling easy today. The same day that I got home, them sores began to gather, and it made me almost crazy. They was gathering for 3 days. I think that it made it worse, riding so far. I had the doctor the next day after I got home. He said that the fever that I had eased the ulcer in me. He say it most always leaves one so. I suppose that you would like to know how I got home. I found Matt in Lyons. I rode home on a springboard. When I got home, I seen Pa stick his head out and went in again. Then Ma, she come. She said, "Where's in creation did you come from?" They all think I have smallpox. I'm glad of it. I think then they'll leave me alone until I feel better. From Nancy McDowell. You must keep up good courage.
I stay in house nights, but I don't bake any more pies. It's too lonesome for me. You say you're lonesome. Well, if you feel any lonesomer than I do, you must feel pretty lonesome.
You can't believe the things that folks are saying about me when I come home. They say I got rid of a young one, and they said that I had the smallpox, and they said I had the bad disorder. I think it's ridiculous to be talked about in that way, but I shall have to stand it. But if all of them behave themselves as well as I did, I think they will do well enough.
Dear wife, I've got me a nice little silver. I don't know whether to send my big revolver home or not. I also bought me an accordion.
You said that you had a nice little silver and was a notion to send it to me, but you didn't tell what it was. Ma reckoned it must be a little woman, or else you would have told what.
Nancy will never return to Washington. In the spring of 1864, the 9th leaves the relative comfort of the Washington forts to join the Army of the Potomac as a member of General Grant's 6th Corps. Grant's goal is to capture Richmond.
May the 19th, 1864. We are at Belle Plaine Landing, 10 miles from Fredericksburg. There is 10,000 rebel prisoners here, and there is more coming all the time. But if you could see the wounded come in here, you'd think our army would be used up in a short time. But there is a regiment after regiment in here going to Grant. There's a hill where we have pitched our tents. You can sit here and see nothing but wagon trains and soldiers for miles around. We expect to start tonight or in the morning. We're waiting for the trains to be loaded. We've just got our orders to strike our tents and leave. We are going to chase old Lee.
Dearest husband, I now sit down to answer your letter that I received tonight. I was very glad to hear from you, but was very sorry to hear that you was going into battle. I live in hopes that you will come off unharmed, but the Lord only knows. I hope there hasn't been any ball made to kill you yet.
The Army of the Potomac marches to a crossroads known as Cold Harbor. Charles' regiment will finally have their chance at glory.
June the 6th, 1864, near Cold Harbor, Virginia. Dearest wife, we have been fighting for most 4 days. We was relieved about 3 hours ago to come to the rear and rest a little bit. We have been for 3 days where we doesn't stand up a minute without having a dozen bullets sent at us. The first night we came here, we charged on them, and we took 1,100 prisoners. Some of our boys was so excited when the Rebs jumped upon the parapet with both hands held up to surrender, they were fired right in them. Seward shows himself a man, not a coward. In the charge, he went right in. He took one rebel with his sword and knocked him head over heels. He got one leg of his pants tore most off. He looked pretty rough. Well, as we was on the march coming down here, I used to feel for some of the women. They cried, went on awfully. The boys would shoot their cattle and chickens and pigs and everything else and go right in the house and take anything they wanted. Vanderbilt was shot right through the underarm. It's pretty bad. Hank Porter was shot dead. I helped carry him out. I hope they will give us some chance to sleep some tonight. From your ever true and affectionate husband.
The Battle of Cold Harbor is a tragic failure for the North. Grant's second assault is delayed, giving the Confederates time to dig an elaborate trench system. In less than an hour, several thousand Union men lay dead and wounded between the lines. Grant later wrote, "No advantage whatever was gained from the heavy loss we sustained."
Dearest husband, I heard the other day that you was wounded, but I hope that it isn't so. I was up to Alton the other day, and I heard the names read over of the killed and wounded. I expected that your name would come next, but it did not come. You better believe I was glad, for then I thought you was in the land of the living.
After the Battle of Cold Harbor, Grant moves his army to capture Petersburg and the railroads that supply the Confederate Army. They encounter delays, giving the Confederates time to reinforce the city. A siege that will last for several months begins.
June the 19th, 1864, near Petersburg. Dearest wife, I tell you, a soldier's life is a curious life. Sometimes we are ordered to halt and put up our tents, and we just get them up when we're ordered to pack up and leave. I've seen some of the men drop right down in the middle of the road. They would be so tired. Sometimes the dust flies so we can't see a rod ahead of us. We was ordered to make a charge yesterday morning, but we got in front of their works and found them rather strong, so we had to fall back. John Dean was shot through the head when going out of the pit to make some coffee. He died instantly. It was a rebel sharpshooter that done it. They're pretty good marksmen. We had a flag of truce hoisted twice. When we was to have a chance to bury the dead, we would go halfway to meet the Rebs and change newspapers, and they talked very reasonable about the war. They said if it wasn't for the officers, they would be all right.
Dear husband, I was very glad to hear from you. Oh yes, I had almost given you up for dead. It is all I ask for in the world, that your life may be spared so that you can return home. I don't think that anything would make me unhappy when I could have you so near me and know that you wasn't in such great danger. But the Lord knows best whether I shall ever see you again or not. My cousin Stephen Wager was in that battle and got his right arm shot off. He had it amputated in the shoulder joint. Miss Carey don't hear anything from her man, as he can't write. They have the story around that he is wounded. I bid you goodbye, hoping to hear from you again.
Nancy continues to receive Charles's letters, describing his involvement in history-making battles, marches, and the destruction and theft of Confederate property. But Charles also writes of the mundane, the kind of information only a wife would be interested to know, like the time he's living in Southern Territory with 2 Confederate women. Alarmed by this development, Nancy gives Charles a little lesson on the dreaded sexually transmitted disease, the clap.
July the 4th, 1864. Dearest wife, I ain't where I was last 4th, but we've got a nice place here for a day or two. There is 2 women lives here, an old woman and a girl, and they cook for us, and we fare pretty well. Before we guarded the house, other soldiers came before the women was up and broke in and took everything they had. They was left without a thing to eat. I don't know what she should do if it wasn't for us soldiers. We gave them hardtack and coffee. Goodbye, Nancy. I wish I was with you today. I will now write a few more lines to you. The 4th is past. I enjoyed myself very well. That woman cooked me some greens and they was good. If it wasn't for one thing, I would be most tempted to strike up a bargain with the girl. She's a very nice, clever girl.
I have just got the letter that you wrote the 4th of July. I don't think pretty much of that girl being so clever. Hi Thompson, he found some clever ones out there. Some folks says that he has the clap, so they can't even go in the house because he smells so bad. They don't think he will live long. They thought he was dead one day. The doctor had been fixing him.
That fellow you spoke about is pretty bad off. You talk as though you thought I might get in that way. But Nat, you needn't be uneasy about that. I don't think that you would think that I would do any such thing. Anyway, if you do, you're greatly mistaken. What does the folks think about the election out there? Here, most of them thinks about old Abe will get it again, and I think so. And I think the war will be settled under him as quickly as anybody else. The Rebs is waiting now for election. I think they'll come to some settlement after election. They would like to have McClellan in if they could.
General Lee sends 14,000 men to Maryland to capture Washington. The North heavily pulls together less than half that amount to confront them at the Monocacy River, approximately 40 miles northwest of Washington. Charles's regiment races from Petersburg to join them. The Union knows that beating the Confederates at Monocacy is impossible, but they hope to buy critical time to allow Washington to prepare itself.
July the 18th, 1864, Washington. Dearest wife, I am very thankful that I am alive to write to you once more. We went to Frederick and commenced fighting, and we kept it up most all day when we had to fall back. There was too many of them for us. Our company is pretty small now. There is a good many killed and wounded and missing, and I can't tell you who all is wounded now, for there was many a good left on the battlefield. I've had some pretty close calls. A piece of shell come and knocked the lock off of my gun and broke the stock pretty well. Carpenter told me to throw it away and pick up another, and I picked up a nice rifle. I was afraid I would get overheated that day, for I was one of the last off the field.
Dearest husband, I am very sorry to hear that you was so near tired out, but I feel very thankful to think that you did not get taken prisoner. Lib York must feel bad about her husband Norman. They think that Bill Burt, Levi Dunbar, and Levi Allen is taken prisoners. They can't hear from them. I heard that Major Taft had sent to his wife that if she wanted to see him alive, she was to come as quick as she could. She started day before yesterday. They think they won't draft around here. I hope that they will. Them old copperheads, I want them to go.
The Battle of Monocacy becomes known as the battle that saved Washington, for it did stall the Confederates long enough to allow the capital to be adequately fortified. President Lincoln drives out to Charles's regiment to congratulate them at their stubborn resistance at Monocacy. His carriage stops in the midst of the regiment, and the young men gather around him in great crowds. A tall lad from Charles's company pushes his way to the carriage and hands the president the eagle plate from his cartridge box strap. It has a Confederate bullet sticking fast in the center. The young man says, "See, Mr. Lincoln, this saved my life at Monocacy. The force of the bullet knocked me down." The president takes the relic in his hand, looks it over carefully, and hands it back to the soldier with the words, "Young man, keep that for your children and grandchildren, for future generations will prize that as the greatest heirloom you could possibly leave them."
September 11th, 1864. Dearest husband, you spoke about the regiment enlisting again. I hope that you don't do something so foolish as to enlist. I'd rather go with half enough to eat than have you enlist again. I'm here all alone today. All the rest has gone to meeting. I wished you was here with me. This makes me think of a dream I had last night. I thought I was out there with you, and we was up to Miss Feek's, and we had a good time, and we was carrying on like everything, and I laughed so loud that it woke me up. I've thought about it all morning.
Now, you had quite a dream. I would have been glad if it had been true. You said you didn't want me to re-enlist. You needn't be scared. I don't think I shall if you didn't want me to. I shouldn't anyway for all the money they can stack up. They say Hammond and his wife had a quarrel and he is re-enlisted.
Charles's regiment is placed under the command of General Sheridan. Grant's instructions to Sheridan are to destroy the crops and rich farmlands of the Shenandoah Valley. No food is to be left that can support the Confederate Army. It was ordered that the destruction must be so severe that even a crow flying across the valley would have to carry its own rations. The rebels gathered to confront the Yankee onslaught.
September the 23rd, 1864. Dearest wife, we have had some pretty hard fighting with the Rebs. We whipped them awfully. We drove them through Winchester. They was a regular panic-stricken. Their own artillery and wagons run over some of their own men. We are still in pursuit. We've taken lots of prisoners and have a good many pieces of artillery. Andrew Reinhardt was shot dead. John Falloon, they don't think will live. I tell you, there is dreadful work through here now, but we're taking the Rebs on every side. You must excuse all mistakes, for I expect to pack and travel every minute.
Dearest husband, my cousin Stephen Wager has got home. Poor fella, he has lost his right arm. Some says they'd rather been killed as come off as he did, but I think I would rather been in his place. But if it had been his leg, it would have been better, I think, for now you have to cut all his victuals up on his plate. He can't help himself at all. They had another party last night. I think it is most too bad to dance in such times. Miss Carey thinks her husband is dead. She's flying around with the Cartwright boys now. First one, then the other. I think she must think herself in purty business. Don't you?
Charles' regiment returns to the siege of Petersburg.
December the 20th, 1864. Dearest wife, we are out on picket now next to the Rebs. They have to lay low once in a while when we get to exchanging shots with them. Sometimes I think I would a good deal rather be in a good feather bed and have you beside me than to lay where we only have some brush stuck up to keep the Johnnies from seeing us. I wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year with plenty of cider and lots of beer. You may take an extra drink for me.
Dearest husband, Christmas is past and gone, and I am not sorry, for I am glad when one day passes away and another comes, for then I think you will be home sometime or another, if your life is spared, which I hope it may be.
There is a good many deserting. The Rebs are coming in our lines, and some of our soldiers are running over there. I saw 3 soldiers of ours hung last Friday for desertion. Some we catched in the valley. We catched 40 or 50. I believe there is to be 3 hung every Friday till they are all hung. There has been 6 hung, and there's to be 3 hung this Friday. I think I shall go and see them. I can stand and look on with a pretty stout heart. When I think the way they take the big bounty and desert and take up arms to fight against us, that's a little too much to stand.
They are having a dance to Saunders tonight at Tom Gulf's house. I wish that you was here to go with me when I see all the rest going. You said that you did not want me to forget you long. I guess that I won't forget you. No, never. But I do not want to spend another 3 years as I have spent this one, nor you either. One might better be dead than live so. Don't you think so? Miss Carey and one of the Cartwright boys got John drunk and then got him married to some kind of a thing. But John says he will never live with her.
January the 1st, 1865. Dearest wife, old 18 and 65 has got around, and I ain't much sorry either. But time passes fast with us now. About 2 o'clock this morning, we was waked up by yelling and shooting of the Rebs when they charged our picket line. You would have laughed to have seen us tumble out of bed. We tumbled over one another pretty fast. Some of our regiment got taken prisoner. I haven't heard exactly how many. My old friend Jeff is at home now. They say they think he will have to have his leg taken off, so Bill Horn was a-telling me. I helped carry Jeff in when he was wounded. He laid there on the ground till next day noon before we found him. Jeff said there was a Reb captain come up to him after he was wounded and commenced turning him over to search him. He asked him what he wanted, and he said, "Your money." And Jeff told him where he could get it for him. He said he put his hand in his pocket and handed him his pocketbook, and the captain took the money out and throwed the pocketbook down. He would almost cry when he told about that. He said he thought it was too bad after shooting him to take the last cent he had. They took lots of money from our boys that day. I could have made $1,000 if I went around and got our wounded and killed and searched them, but I wouldn't do such a thing. There is lots of them that does do it, and the boys that has lots of money then.
I feel very sorry for them men that was captured, but was very glad that it was not you. You must be careful when you go on picket and not get taken. Poor old Jeff can't bob around as much now with one leg. He hated to have the Rebs take his money away, too.
Well, it's a-getting so cold. But we had good luck to make a haul on a couple of blankets the other night when we was guarding baggage. I find a man has to look out for himself here. If he don't, nobody else will. I guess I didn't tell you how we got some beef the other day when we was on picket. There was a cow deserted from the Rebs and came right up on our post. She had a bell on. We catched her and tied her up and milked her. Then we held a court-martial over her and sentenced her to death. But we thought we would keep her till near night so we could milk her again. And after we milked her, we took her out one side and killed her. I tell you, that beef came pretty exceptionable, and the milk too. Well, that's enough cow story. I think a good deal about you nights, Nat, when I'm walking my lonely beat in front of the Rebs. But I hope the time is not far distant when I shan't have to do that.
I don't think I will have you court-martial my cow, because I know what the sentence would be. Levi Dunbar had the party the other night at his shop. He had his Lucy there. I heard he got drunk and he would hug and kiss her right afore the whole of them. He says he likes Lucy and he can't help it. Samuel Thompson, he waits on Polly Ann Tyndale. The boys go with just any girl. They are mine too. They are scarce, and there is plenty of girls.
February the 28th, 1865, near Petersburg. Dearest wife, I have just come off on picket. 2 deserters came in last night, a post or 2 above me. One of these men said he had a wife and 4 children, and they was a-suffering for food. Our boys trades with them most every day. We trade them soap and coffee for tobacco and other trinkets that they have. They are awful afraid of Sherman. He's going through the Southern Confederacy like a dose of salts. We cheer when we're on the picket line for Sherman. It rather makes the Johnnies hang down their heads. There's a good many of them disheartened and discouraged, and I am glad of it.
The Confederate Army is dying. Grant prepares to make his final move.
March the 15th, 1865, near Petersburg. Dearest wife, we have had orders to pack up and be ready to move at any minute. We have a pretty big fight right here. I guess we will have to look out for the bullets before long. But I hope not, for I don't like them little fellas. I've heard that Bill and his wife is about to part. They say she has cut around with men pretty smartly.
Charles, with the Army of the Potomac, engaged General Lee and his Confederate Army in battles from Petersburg to Amelia Springs to Sailor's Creek and finally to Appomattox Courthouse, where General Lee, the pride of the Confederacy, surrenders on April 9th, 1865. On the same day, Nancy writes,
Dearest husband, the cannon's roars here tonight. I hope it is for some good news, for I like to hear good news. I hope the war will be soon over so the poor men can come home to their loved ones. I think that will be all that I will ask for, is to have you with me. I hope that I will see the time when I shan't have such trouble.
Upon Lee's surrender, the capital rejoiced, but the celebrations ended the night of April the 14th. Dr. Sabin of Charles' regiment wrote to his wife, Last night I was an eyewitness to the most appalling tragedy ever enacted in the history of the country. I went to hear Laura Kane in Our American Cousin at Ford's Theater. Mr. Lincoln, accompanied by Mrs. Lincoln, entered the upper private box. The audience greeted him with prolonged cheers. Just as the curtain was rising in the third act, the sharp report of a pistol was heard in the direction of the president's box, and immediately thereafter a man jumped from the box upon the stage with a drawn dagger in his left hand. As he reached the stage, he cried, "Sic semper tyrannis," and immediately ran along the footlights and fled the theater by a back entrance. Someone said, "The president is shot." I ran immediately to the president's box. As soon as I saw the wound, I saw there was no hope. Some brandy was brought and given, but he could not swallow. The bullet entered the head behind the left ear and penetrated the brain. He was carried to a private residence across the street. Mrs. Lincoln was nearly crazy, and she followed from the theater. She cried in frantic words, "Oh, my poor husband! Oh, my poor husband!" The president, of course, was entirely unconscious and remained so until he died at 7:30 o'clock this morning. An assassination attempt was also made upon Secretary of State Seward. Lewis Powell entered his Washington home and stabbed him and one of his sons several times. Seward, however, is able to recover and grieves deeply over the death of the president. It was later reported that P.T. Barnum offered $1,000 for the pillow Lincoln died upon.
May the 3rd, 1865, Danville, Virginia. Dearest wife, the Army felt very bad when they heard of Lincoln's death. I hope they will catch the band that done it. I think they will get their just due. One thing is pretty certain, our fighting is at an end, and I ain't much sorry. I am further from home than I ever was before. Some of these old planters is pretty well off. They own 500 Negroes. There are some good Union folks here, and there is some that would cut our throats if they could get the chance.
They think that Seward and his sons is out of danger. I hear that Johnston had surrendered up his whole army to Grant. I hope that he has. They say that old Jeff Davis is trying to leave the country. He has robbed the banks. I hope they will catch the old scamp. He has done enough to hang him if he had his just due. Lib York was over to borrow money off me the other day. She wanted it to get her black clothes on account of her husband Norman being dead. But I didn't lend her any. She had ought to have been saving her money as I have been. Then she would have had some. Miss Carey can't get along without a bedfellow. Lou Williams goes and stays with Miss Carey while his wife is off someplace visiting her cousin. I thought that Lou was more of a man than that. Miss Carey lives in Alton, so he has it pretty handy. I hope he will catch the itch. She has got enough to supply the whole of them.
Danville, Virginia. Dearest wife, the woods look splendid here. They are in full leaf. I've come out in them to write. I hope it won't be long before we can examine the same beautiful scene together. Little did I think when I left Canada that I would be gone for 7 years. Sometimes when I get to thinking about my native land and what good times I've had there, it makes a feeling come over me that makes me feel sad. A good many times I felt rather down. It looked pretty dark before me. But I have been favored with good luck, and I hope it will continue till I reach home. Goodbye, dearest Nancy, for a short time.
You said that you was in the woods. I would have liked to have been there with you and see the beautiful scene, for I love to be in the woods. They have drummed Miss Carey out of Alton. Lou Williams went the same day that she went. Lou and Miss Carey was caught to bed together. He paid her off in Confederate money. They laughed at him and said that was pretty cheap. I hope that he caught the itch off of her. Then he would get the worth of his money.
In May and June, the remaining Confederates surrender. Charles's regiment is transferred to Washington. Charles did not make it home in time to celebrate the 4th of July with Nancy, But it wouldn't be long after. Charles and Nancy build a home in a little crossroads called Alton, New York. They have 2 children, first a girl and then a boy 13 years later. Charles dies of a heart attack in his 70s in 1913. Nancy outlives her husband by 18 years. Suffering from a lingering illness, she spends her final months rocking in her chair and looking out the window. Perhaps she's waiting once again for Charles to come to her. One afternoon, Nancy falls asleep in her rocker before the window and never wakes up. Her town feels they have lost a celebrity. Her obituary states, Mrs. McDowell is dead. Shook hands with Lincoln. With the death of Mrs. Nancy McDowell, the town of Saunders loses the distinction of having a resident who could boast of having shaken hands and talked with the martyred Lincoln. Nancy is buried beside Charles at the bottom of a slope across the road from their home. Although their final resting place isn't the feather bed that Charles had imagined for them, their headstone is engraved with a verse referring to lovers spending an entire evening together. Until the daybreak and the shadows flee away. Charles had asked Nancy to save his letters. It's unusual that he, a soldier in several battles, is also able to save hers. As a result, we have this account of love, sacrifice, and bravery, despite the war's infidelities, scandals, and the ever-present threat of death. Nancy and Charles were devoted to each other and to our great country, the United States of America. Nancy and Charles were ever true.